In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. The 13th day of October has been observed by a variety of people for a variety of reasons for a long time. It was also, the commemoration also concerns an event that occurred on a Friday. And so Friday the 13th has been etched into the unconscious of the people, especially in Europe and probably more specifically in France. And therefore, for many of us, especially Gnostics, it is a significant day. What it has to do with that on that day, on 13th of October, back, I'm never very good on dates, but it's probably in the 1300s. Would that be right? I have to have my fact checkers here, you know. I wonder whether a fact checker might be a new game. You see, there is checker and then there is fact checker. Not a very significant suggestion, but a suggestion nevertheless, you know. So in any event, that is the time when the once extremely important and illustrious Order of the Knights Templar was dissolved by the joint nefarious action of the King of France and of the then Pope, and then all manner of interesting and not so interesting stories, tales developed about the Knights Templar, which are always entertaining, but not always true. So what we are dealing with here is that at the time of the Crusades, which was, you know, a very important period of Middle Eastern and European history, there were eventually formed a number of knightly orders which are sometimes described as soldier monks, where they had their own priests and prelates as well, but that is probably a fairly good expression. And so the French knights banded together in the Knights Templar, les Templiers. And to this day, if you travel around the French countryside from north to south and from east to west, you hardly will find a town that doesn't have an old Templar building, a Templar house. And then they were an extremely important and very valiant defenders of the holy sites. They had their houses in the Holy Land also, and they had all kinds of other interesting features. One of them being that history credits them with, believe it or not, having been the first bankers. Now, one does not readily associate a knight in full armor with a sword with banking, but since they were spread all over Europe and the Middle East, at some point they got the idea that if somebody wanted to send some money, which was usually gold or silver, to a relatively distant point, that this could be accomplished much more safely and expeditiously when they didn't have to carry the actual gold pieces with them, say from, I don't know, from Toulouse to Paris. first of all, they're heavy, and secondly, they're a great and delightful enticement for robbery, an art which has not gone out of business since the Middle Ages, and we can hear about it on the radio or see it on television even today. So anyway, they were a French order and very popular in France. In fact, they were founded by a group of knights from the south of France under the presiding and beneficial presence of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. And Saint Bernard had a great many friends and relatives in the south of France, because that is where he was from. He was a Comte de Tesselin from the south of France, and so he inducted so many of his nephews and cousins, and they became the first Knights Templar. Subsequently, of course, they set up bases in the Holy Land, which was a locale of fighting and bloodshed even then, and continued that bloody tradition to the present day. But Saint Bernard was, of course, one of the great saints of the Middle Ages, and with many different talents, and also probably one of the greatest mystics, at least of the masculine gender, of the medieval period. Saint Bernard was the second founder of the Cistercian order of monks, which sort of developed out of the Benedictines, who are the first monastic order of Western Christendom. In the East, they have the Basilian monks who are still there, and whether you're a Russian or whether you are a Syrian or whether somewhere in India, if you become an Orthodox monk, you follow the rule of Saint Basil. Anyway, I'm sure that you are terribly interested in that, and if I keep on along this line, then I think you might begin to undertake your afternoon nap. So maybe I'm not longer, but anyway, Saint Bernard was a fabulous individual. It's worth reading about him. He has a pretty good entry about him in which is the famous several-volume book about the saints.
Lives of the Saints?
Yeah, The Lives of the Saints by Butler, that's it, yeah. And truly a remarkable man of God, a miracle worker, and a man of frequent ecstasies, the one that I always like, which we used to tell to irritate our teachers who were Cistercian monks, was the one wherein he was going to undertake a journey somewhere. So he, in Clairvaux, which was his abbey, is one of the most beautiful Gothic structures. In any event, he got on his horse and left. As he had traveled already several miles, then some countrymen saluted him and said, you know, "Most Reverend Abbot, pardon me for disturbing you, but you are sitting the wrong way on the horse." So he was in ecstasy. He didn't know too much of what was going on. So he got on the horse facing the rear end of the horse and his back to the front. So these are the sorts of things that can happen when you are in transcendental states and don't really watch yourself as to what may be happening. Anyway, a very, very great man, and while he was alive, he had quite a long life. He was the great patron of the Templars. In fact, there are all kinds of even little symbolic elements. The Cistercian order, where I spent my school years, some of my school years, wear a white monastic cassock and superimposed upon it a black scapular and the black sash. So the black and the white became the colors with which the Templar order came to be associated. So they really, I shouldn't really make this a school dissertation, but let's if we are there, the Templars had two flags. One of them you see over there, that's the white and red flag, which has a red Maltese cross, the cross with the 8 points in its center. And that was sort of the official flag, but they had a battle flag, which was only used in battle, which was called the Beau-Seant, and the Beau-Seant was simply half the flag in black and half the flag in white, which is again it's the Cistercian habit. So they were certainly a very distinguished order, highly regarded, and since they were functioning for such a long time, and no doubt with their banking business they amassed a considerable fortune. Well, various people became, as this often happens, various people became jealous or envious of their good fortune. Nowadays, such people simply join a communist or a socialist group and try to take it away from the people. When you have something I want, and then you got to give it to me because I want it. As in would be said by Gollum in The Hobbit, we want it, my precious. Yes, we want it. So in any event, so the enviers of the Templars grew, and even some of the other knightly orders were envious of them because the Templars were so prominent and so rich. So at a certain point, let's see, I can't remember the year, but I think it's in the 1300s, a pope by the name of Clement, who was anything but living up to his name, and King Philip the Fair, who was anything but fair. But fair, of course, in Old English means someone who is just. You exercise a fair judgment and things of that sort. But anyway, they condemned the Templars, and on the 13th of October, they were arrested in practically every country, particularly in France, and their goods, their many buildings and other riches have been taken from them, and from then on there were no Knights Templar within the medieval society. So the condemnation and eventually the execution of the leadership of the Templars, led by Jacques Molay, the Grand Master, and a number of other Grand Officers, remained in the public tongue, and they were very popular in France, largely because all kinds of noble families, particularly of the lesser nobility, joined the Templars, just made them knights. And so all of these families whose members had been incarcerated and subsequently executed were not feeling very happy about what was being done to their families. So the execution of Jacques de Molay and the whole debacle about the Templars remained as a sad and sorrowful spot on the fabric of French history. And there are all kinds of stories which may be just that. One of them being that when, back during the Reign of Terror, King Louis XVI was about to be treated by the Red Lady, the guillotine, he said to someone who was there in a loud voice, "This is the revenge of Jacques de Molay." Now, Jacques de Molay had been dead for a long time, and we don't know of any Templars who were present, but in any event, that's one of the stories. I think even Eliphas Levi mentions it in one of his books. In any event, in those days, if you wanted to do away with somebody, the best accusation that you could bring forward was always that of heresy. Because that was a religious matter, and there were the Dominican monks and so forth who manned it, and they decimated a lot of countries with their executions. And therefore, the Templar order was dissolved from its foundations to the top, and the prominent Templars were executed. All right. That being the case, however, there are various stories, some of them more true than others. One of them being that when Jacques de Molay was taken on one of the little islands in the Seine, you can walk to it if you walk down a little street from Notre Dame toward the Seine. On that island, they were burnt at the stake on the 13th of October. That made a big impression because they were so influential before, and because there are a lot of families, especially noble families, had their sons in the Templar order, and so this really created a very big bad mark on the French state and on the church. And it is said by many reputable historians that there were two great wounds that France carried since the Middle Ages. That was the dissolution and execution of the Templars and the Albigensian wars against the Cathars. Because of depending on different geographical locations and social standing, these two persecutions have gravely hurt large numbers of important French people and important French families. Now, that is the basic story. But as it happens, probably because of the way the Templars were treated, and because they were, as long as they were in existence, they went back and forth, of course, between the Middle East, and in fact they are called Knights Templar because they were founded on the spot that was and is believed to be the spot where the Temple of Solomon stood. Subsequently, of course, when everything went south, that means went Muslim, that belief continued, and now the Mosque of Omar, the Jerusalem Mosque, stands on that spot. But at that time, the Templars had conquered it. So let us say they were a very prominent and important military force that tried to keep the Holy Land in Christian hands, which eventually, of course, didn't work out. But while they were there, they were probably the greatest military force. Of course, there were other. Don't be afraid. No, I'm not going to go through all of them. But there were other prominent knightly orders. The Italian knights banded together in the order of the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem, also known as the Knights of Malta, because when they had to leave the Holy Land for quite a while, they set up their own little principality in Malta, and they have the opposite symbolism of the Templars. They have a red flag with a white Maltese cross on it. And they are the only ones who are still functioning, although I understand not functioning as happily and well as they used to, because the present Pope doesn't like him. And I think they return the favor. But I've been at their International Grand Magistrate back in Rome, which is the Villa San Giovanni, a beautiful place. And so they are still in existence, but I think they are waiting for a change at the Vatican at the present time. And then there were some minor orders in Spain, and the certainly very powerful and subsequently historical order of the Teutonic Knights up in the north in Prussia, of whom the last Grand Master was the great-granddaddy of the Hohenzollern dynasty. And when the Reformation came, he just quit the Catholic Church and took the lands of the Teutonic Knights as his family's goods. And that's what they did at that time. So that the beginning of Prussia and ultimately of the German Empire was really the order of the Teutonic Knights. And their colors are also white and black. And one thing that remained, because the kings of Prussia kept it, was the black, the Iron Cross, which became the most important decoration of the Prussian or ultimately Imperial German state, and which even Hitler kept in another form. Now, if you were an Air Force officer, then you would get the Blue Cross. Blue Max, as it was called. There was even a pretty good movie made about it some time back. And the other one is the Iron Cross, or just the Max. It's the Max because it's the maximum. That was the highest decoration that was being awarded. Now, once again, I think that you are. This is a good introduction for you for your afternoon nap, because I'm telling you all of these stories. But anyway, the Teutonic Knights were the other great knight, and of course they maintained themselves in a different form when they took over East Prussia, West Prussia, and eventually the German Empire. So these were the three biggest knightly orders, but there were others. Now then, why are we interested in this? Or why should we be interested in it? Why am I interested in it? Because there is a good deal of evidence indicating that among their many other accomplishments, the Knights Templar, when they were still doing their thing, had brought some secret and obscure traditions and teachings from the Middle East back to France and ultimately to Europe. And that these teachings and perhaps practices, on the other hand, were not very orthodox Catholic, but that they were probably of Gnostic origin. So we regard the Templars, especially in their martyrdom, as sort of dead relatives, and we do observe this day with the red mass of the martyrs, and we had various other decorations here of that sort in the past. But what happened then, that organizations that had a falling out with the Roman Catholic Church or something of that sort, picked up the Templar traditions. And so there is the successors, or one of the major successors of the Templar order, became the highest degree of the York Rite of Freemasonry. And if you are in a big Masonic meeting where everything goes on, you see the gentlemen in beautiful uniforms with the hats with feathers on them and so forth, and their Templar cross. So it is quite likely that there was an element of gnosis there, and that therefore to acknowledge our relationship to them is certainly a good thing. But I'm just sort of rambling on, which I shouldn't do. But among them, I would say that what this commemorative day brings to our attention is that warfare, military activities and virtues and so forth are part of life on this earth. And that therefore the knightly virtues cultivated by the knightly orders, who were really very, very important in medieval European culture, are important. And that perhaps it would behoove us, when we read about King Arthur and the knightly round table, or read about the Templars, to remember that certain codes of courage and virtue and faithfulness and so forth were greatly, highly extolled and cultivated by these knightly orders, and that therefore we should not look down on the days of knighthood or on the knightly orders as some kind of a outmoded anachronism, but to see that the esoteric tradition, the inner tradition, will attach itself to various things, and that there is no doubt about it, that it attached itself to some degree and extent to the Templars, and that is why they survive now in Masonry and various other Neo-Templar orders. So maybe it behooves the modern and postmodern humanity to meditate a little bit about the knightly virtues and courage, and how to honor those who are to be honored, particularly women, which was, now of course the knights did not marry, so that I'm sure made the women that much more interesting to them. But let us say that they cultivated a certain esoteric undertones under Christendom, which I'm glad has not been lost. And you know, there was, this is really going to interest you, because nobody knows about it now but you, pretty much. During the pontificate of now Saint John Paul II, there was an effort to restore the Templar order. And I think it was done by a number of French and Italian people, men who were attached to the order. And Pope John Paul encouraged them. And he made various statements that indicated that he didn't believe that the Templars were executed rightfully and justly. But then when he was no longer Pope, they dropped the project. So now Templary is still only given to the Freemasons, which is quite all right. Now then, so we need to keep some of these matters in mind, and for instance, I've got to quit here. When people begin to turn around and look at the clock, then I'm in trouble, see? Because I can see it from here, but you can't. So the issue here being that the ideals of knighthood and the knightly code, by knightly here mean not contrasting to daily, are a very important feature of, let us say, moving toward the Gnosis. Because before we can aspire to occult and mystical things, we need to aspire to an honorable character and an honorable life. And certainly the knighthood and the various knightly orders were of that nature, and it extends even into the angelic kingdom. There are many icons of Saint Michael, the Michael, the meaning of which is the strength of God, and he always has a sword in his hand. Why? Because the strength and the willingness to stand up for your ideals and for your the things that you care about and the people that you care about is an honorable thing, and it should not be put down. So I think that some kind of continuing of the knightly mythos of the knightly virtues would behoove the contemporary secularistic society very much to change too, because strength and valor and courage and honor, these things are eternal. And they are not tied to a particular historical period, but it would seem that they are not very much present in our society at the present time. So their restoration and their cultivation would be certainly to our benefit. So these are some of the ruminative reasons why I thought that I should bring to your attention why we celebrate Templar Day, the 13th of October, and why we hope that perhaps that mythos will be revived, and that the days of knighthood might not be entirely over, and if they are restored in the proper way, they might even have a relationship to our tradition. So may the mystery of that which hangs twixt heaven and earth descend upon you and remain with you always. You know, the Templar motto was not to us, O Lord, but to thy name be the glory. Non nobis Domine, se nomini tuo da gloriam.